What if I told you that the reason you're constantly battling your emotions, feeling overwhelmed, angry, or anxious, isn't about them, your boss or your partner or your circumstances, but it's about something much deeper, something inside you? I've spent years exploring the intricate landscape of emotional regulation, and in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to save you countless hours of frustration and confusion by sharing with you what I have learned about the process that can finally bring you peace. I'm Anna from Flow and Purpose. Welcome to my channel. So, the first stage in exploring our emotions is that we discover we are externalizing them. So what that means is that we are triggered, we respond in an emotional way, but we assume that it has something to do with the circumstance or with someone that we're in relationship with. And in that interaction, our attention is to the outside. It's their fault that we're angry. It's because of a certain action or something that's been said or not said that we're triggered. So in that way, we give our power away and we are dependent on externalities, and therefore our well-being is not really in our hands. We could spend our whole life in this way, and perhaps you know people of a certain age who are still stuck in this mode. It's not an optimal way of functioning, and it causes frustration because there is no grip on our emotions. We're at the mercy of externalities. What happens is, if you're observant and you delve deep into your own experience, what you notice is that you get triggered by certain things and you can start getting curious about your own emotional reactions. You can see if you can discover any patterns. So you may find that the way that you're triggered is following a certain theme. That, for example, in conversations with colleagues or in conversations with relatives or friends, that you get triggered in similar ways. For example, that you feel disrespected, or that you feel that you're not being heard, that your point of view is not being taken seriously. So just notice in your own experience the kind of things that tend to trigger you, the kind of things that you find difficult and that you have like this perhaps overreaction about. And if you have noticed a dominant theme, you may want to consider whether this stems from your childhood. So in daily life, if we have emotional responses to things, generally they're in proportion. Someone bumps into us and there's a moment of anger arising, and then it immediately dissipates when we see that this was unintentional. But if this emotional reaction persists, if it takes a long time, for example, your boss gives you a positive review with a negative or a constructive critical comment in it, and you find yourself ruminating on that and being furious about it, and that kind of continues for a number of days. And this comes from my own personal experience, this example, so I'm very familiar with how that feels on the inside. This sensitivity to criticism, in this case, is a theme, and you might want to consider where it comes from. Looking at the reactions of others can help, because you can distinguish, other people don't seem to be affected as much by this kind of thing. So it is something really personal to me. So in this second stage, you notice these patterns, you notice the underlying themes of your emotional reactivity, and you start getting curious about their origin. And very often we can trace that to our own childhood. For example, in being judged or criticized, we can develop this kind of oversensitivity to judgment or criticism, and we can learn to expect it, even in circumstances where it would not be forthcoming. And when we notice this tendency that has developed in childhood, the next natural reaction is to want to get rid of it, to overcome it. But there's a danger in that we want to take a shortcut. And what I would advise you against doing is pushing these emotions away. Because in emotional suppression, we just postpone this whole process and its unfoldment. We try to keep the emotions under the surface, but they have their own way of surfacing time and again until we're ready to look. So if you find yourself wanting to get rid of these patterns, I would invite you to the next stage in the emotional processing and emotional maturity is to look at how these patterns have developed, because they're not random. And what for me personally was a great discovery is that these things develop as adaptation patterns. They have served a purpose in the past, and this purpose has been to protect you. So if you have found yourself in environments where you are harshly judged or criticized, it makes perfect sense to develop a strategy of not speaking out, of not making yourself heard, of not taking a lot of space, and being perhaps developing people-pleasing tendencies in order to minimize conflict. So these kind of emotional tendencies, which in later life as an adult may not be helpful to you, have had a helpful function in your past, in your own childhood. And there are several sources of these underlying emotions. One is, as I've said, from our childhood. These are things that you can bring the attention inside of your body to feel the emotion, and that doesn't have to be necessarily during a conversation where you found yourself triggered, but later when you have more time. And as you turn your attention to the physical expression of the emotion in your body, where it is held, take your time. And what you often find is that a memory would surface. You have to spontaneously think about an event in the past, and this will give you insights about where the emotion is coming from. And these are young parts of ourselves that can do with a bit of comfort from our adult self, to be held and seen in a way that we as children at that age, whenever this pattern has developed, we needed to be held and seen. There are other sources of these underlying heavy emotions. They can come to us intergenerationally if we're bonded with an ancestor with a heavy fate, and that has not been processed and not been seen or acknowledged, or if we have been parentified as children, for example. So these are more complicated intergenerational patterns which you may also detect in yourself. But in any case, as you learn to dare to look deeper and to acknowledge the origins of these patterns and the useful function that they have served for you in the past, you can really soften, you can be very compassionate with yourself about having these reactions, even if they don't serve you in the present time, so that you can calm these younger parts of you that really are in a way frozen in the trauma, frozen in the past. And you can comfort them and let them know that now as an adult, you are able to take criticism, for example, and that does not threaten your well-being in the way perhaps that it would have done when you were a child. So as you develop this ability to be more present in the moment as a heavy emotion arises and to observe it, you develop this ability to be present with difficult emotions. And very often you may get swept up in them, but as you practice this, you will notice that there will develop a distance that you can observe the emotion arising and peaking and dissipating, so that you're not swept away by it. And as you practice this, you will discover that you're able to sink in deeper into yourself. And there is an undertone of peace and neutrality, an undertone of equanimity that is there, available at all times in the depths of your soul. So these emotional reactivity patterns will no longer be able to sweep you along. They will perhaps for a time continue to arise, and as you continue to allow them, and they will kind of move through you, and eventually they will dissipate. So I hope that you have benefited from what you have learned here. I will be starting a group which will look into inner child patterns and also intergenerational patterns. So if you'd like to sign up, please do so through the link below. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to connecting soon.